Hey there! Tonight's bedtime story is a little less fairy tale and a little more classified. You're about to enter a world of secrets, stress-induced ulcers, trench coats that don't breathe, and a lot of running from people with facial scars and bad tempers. Welcome to the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS. It's 1943. The world is on fire. And someone in Washington just decided you look like you could lie convincingly and not scream when threatened with pliers. Congratulations, you're a spy now. But don't start imagining tuxedos, gadgets, and a flirtatious round of baccarat with a German double agent. You're not James Bond. You're not even James Page. You're a hastily trained, woefully underpaid American with a fake passport and an overstuffed pair of wool trousers. You're about to live a life where brushing your teeth is a security risk and blinking too loudly could get you killed. Let's rewind a little. You didn't plan on becoming a spy. Maybe you're a college kid with big dreams of being a writer, or a mechanic who fixed carburetors until some army recruiter saw "knows French" on your intake form and decided that made you international espionage material. You blinked, and now you're standing in a nondescript building in Washington, D.C., being handed a folder marked "Top Secret" by a man who hasn't blinked since Pearl Harbor. He tells you it's a special job, a patriotic one, very hush-hush, national security, you'll be behind enemy lines, doing sensitive work. He says sensitive like it's a napkin brand. What he really means is, you might die, and if you do, your mum will get a letter that says heroic service, but not much else. Because officially, you won't exist. There's no medal, no parade, no pension. Just silent dust. And maybe a small plaque if someone in a windowless office feels sentimental 10 years from now. You're escorted into a different room where another man, this one chewing a pencil that clearly lost the will to live, hands you a waiver to sign. It says something vague like release of liability, which roughly translates to we're not responsible for anything, including your inevitable psychological unravelling. You sign it because the guy next to you already did, and peer pressure is strong, even among covert operatives. Then it begins. Spy school. Now you might think spy training is a glamorous affair, that it involves rooftop chases and witty banter and a charming instructor with a mysterious past. In reality, it's mud, failure, and a Scottish ex-saboteur named MacDougall who yells at you for breathing inefficiently. You're taught to memorise things. Fast. Phone numbers, dead drop locations, names of fake relatives, backup identities in case your first cover gets you executed. You also learn how to stab someone in the neck with a fountain pen. There's no ceremony, no applause. Just a grizzled instructor saying, again, but faster, while sipping lukewarm tea like this is all perfectly normal. The physical part is worse. You're expected to scale walls, crawl through barbed wire, and jump from moving trucks, all while maintaining the casual elegance of someone who might later charm a Gestapo officer out of a train schedule. Spoiler: you don't look elegant. You look like a sleep-deprived librarian trying to wrestle a coat rack. Your muscles ache in new, suspicious ways, and your left knee develops a click that becomes your constant companion. It clicks in Morse code now. You think it's trying to say, run. There's also the psychological portion. They test your nerves by locking you in a fake cell and pretending you've been captured. The lights flicker. A man screams down the hall. Another one calmly asks you where your comrades are, then offers you a cigarette and smiles like a dentist about to do unspeakable things. You're supposed to stay calm lie convincingly, and not sweat too obviously. You fail. You sweat so much that they ask if you're smuggling a lake under your shirt. Then comes the small matter of learning to kill someone silently. The preferred methods include piano wire, poison pins, and a penknife in just the right spot between two ribs. It's described clinically, like a cooking class for sociopaths. Insert here, twist slightly, and they won't scream unless you hit the lung. If you do hit the lung, make sure it's raining or noisy. You nod like this is fine, like you're absolutely the kind of person who could stab a Nazi officer in an alleyway and then calmly ask for directions in German. You learn about gadgets, but don't get too excited. This isn't Q's lab. It's more like a garage sale hosted by a lunatic. Exploding cigarettes, pens that shoot cyanide gas, matchboxes with hidden maps, lipstick that can kill a man, but only if he's allergic to shellfish and you poke him hard enough. You're handed a fake passport and a hollow coin. You accidentally drop the coin, it opens, and your instructor says, "Well, now you're dead. Try again." You do, you drop it again. You're going to be great at this. Languages are important. So if you don't already speak fluent French or German, too bad. You get 6 weeks to cram in as much as possible. You learn to say, "The train arrives at 6, and I am a travelling salesman, and please do not shoot me in the spine. I am but a humble goat herder." Your accent is troubling. A French instructor weeps softly as you butcher his mother tongue, but he signs your clearance anyway. You're officially passable, which in spy terms means won't immediately cause an international incident. After weeks of grueling training, fake identities, and accidentally blowing up a toilet during explosives class, you don't talk about that, you're finally cleared for duty. They give you a radio the size of a small fridge, a suitcase with a false bottom, and a vial of poison that you're told is just in case. In case of what, you ask? The instructor shrugs and says, "You'll know." You go home for one night. You're told to say nothing. Not to your mother, your neighbour, or your suspiciously inquisitive cat. Your parents think you're being deployed to North Africa as a logistics officer. You smile and nod. You're not even sure which continent you'll end up on. That night, you sleep restlessly, because somehow the most terrifying thing isn't the mission, it's how excited you are. The fear hasn't kicked in yet, but it will. Oh, it will. The next morning, you're driven in a blacked-out truck to an airfield you've never seen before. You're handed an envelope with one line of instructions: arrive, observe, disappear. The pilot doesn't speak. The co-pilot offers you gum, like this is just another Tuesday. You take it. You chew slowly. And then you're airborne, on your way to Europe, into a war zone, with nothing but your wits, a forged ID, and the creeping realization that this might have been a very bad career move. There's no welcome party, no applause. You land in the dead of night, in a field somewhere in southern England. You're shuffled into a small stone building where a man with impeccable hair and no discernible sense of humour tells you your new name, your new occupation, and your new birthplace. You forget your real name immediately. You are now Émile Dubois, a travelling ink salesman from Lyon. Your hobbies include cycling, cheese, and resisting the Third Reich. He hands you a map. It's half burned, on purpose. You memorise it, then toss it into the fireplace. You're told the next drop will be at midnight. You need to be ready. Drop? You ask. He smiles faintly and points to a parachute. That night, As the wind howls and your teeth chatter inside your borrowed boots, you crouch in the belly of a British bomber, strapped to enough gear to drown in a puddle. The pilot shouts something, the door opens, and suddenly you're airborne, falling through the sky toward France. Toward danger. Toward espionage. Welcome to your new life. You'll lie. You'll cheat. You'll probably cry in a barn. But for now, try to enjoy the free fall. Because once you hit the ground, the real horror begins. You land like a sack of anxiety and regret in the middle of an empty French field. The grass is wet, your knees are wet, your soul is wet. It's 3 a.m, and your parachute is tangled in a tree that's definitely older and more emotionally stable than you are. You scramble to hide the gear, check your fake ID, and whisper the first line of your cover story under your breath. My name is Emile Dubois. I sell ink. I love goats. Or was it sheep? Doesn't matter now. The training will fix that, supposedly. The next few days are a blur. You're picked up by a contact who doesn't say a word for 6 hours, not even a grunt. He drives a rusty Citroen that smells like onions and fear. You pass through winding roads, sleepy villages, and checkpoints where you suddenly forget every French word except bonjour and pain. Somehow you survive, which means it's time for the real fun. Spy School, Continental Edition. It's not school, really. More like an abandoned manor that smells of mildew, boiled cabbage, and unspoken trauma. Welcome to one of the OSS's European training outposts. It's freezing. The walls are damp. The bed you're assigned still has a warm dent from the last guy, who may or may not have been arrested, or shot, or both. The only thing they tell you is, don't ask about Pierre. Your instructor appears at breakfast. He's an American, ex-Marine. Looks like he eats cigarettes for protein. His voice is gravel dipped in whiskey and resentment. His name might be Frank, or Tank, or just a noise people make when they see him coming. He tells you that this training will separate the actors from the corpses. You try to laugh. He doesn't. The first thing they do is take away your name. Again. Your alias isn't just something for papers now. It's your entire personality. You're no longer whoever you were. You are Emile, or Klaus, or Maria, if you're one of the 2 women in the group, who's already outperforming all the men and making it look like a casual walk through hell. You learn to respond to your fake name, write it flawlessly, and recount your fake childhood in a fake village with fake memories that you now have to believe or die trying. Language drills begin at 6 a.m. sharp. You're shouted at in French, German, Italian, and sometimes just loud silence meant to simulate interrogation. You're expected to not only speak the language but think in it, which is hard when your real brain is still figuring out where the bathroom is. You fumble verb conjugations while a man named Dieter asks you if you're a spy in German. You accidentally tell him you are. He writes something in his notebook and walks away. You assume you're now on a list, possibly several. Then come the accents. If you don't have one, you need one. If you have one, it's probably wrong. You spend hours repeating the same sentence. I am but a humble paper salesman looking for work. You say it 80 times a day. By week 2, you hate both paper and sales. The physical training is back, and it hasn't gotten better. You're forced to run up muddy hills in a trench coat while carrying a briefcase full of bricks. Why bricks? Because radios are too fragile and heavy, and bricks never complain. The coat gets heavier every hour. By the third day, it smells like a wet sheep that's been emotionally compromised. Combat training is updated for field conditions. You learn how to kill someone in an alley, in a stairwell, or under the table at a crowded cafe. Everything is a weapon. Shoelaces, ink pens, belt buckles. One instructor demonstrates how to use a newspaper to crush a windpipe. You don't read the news for a week after that. Then there's the paranoia training. Yes, that's a thing. You're dropped in a city and told to make contact with a fake resistance member. Problem is, everyone might be the resistance member, or the fake Gestapo officer, or the planted civilian who's testing whether you panic when asked about your uncle's printing shop. You do panic. You say your uncle runs a cheese museum. They write something in another notebook. You're now definitely on more lists. They drill into you one lesson above all: trust no one. Your contacts will lie. Your allies will forget you. Your backup plans will fail. You're given multiple passwords, backup passwords, and if someone uses this password, run like hell. You meet people with names like Mouse and Echo, who speak in riddles and smell like motor oil. You learn to write invisible ink messages using urine, lemon juice, or crushed aspirin. Your roommate tries to invent one using cabbage water. It works, but the letter smells like betrayal and soup. Mealtime is its own form of psychological warfare. The food is grey, just grey. Some of it moves. No one asks why. You chew in silence and make eye contact with the potato like it owes you something. There's always one guy who eats like it's a picnic. He's either a sociopath or already dead inside. Possibly both. Sleep is optional. You lie awake on your straw-filled mattress, going over cover stories, fake routes, resistance signals, and what to say if you're captured and forced to explain why your passport says you're a Belgian beekeeper, but you have no idea what honey tastes like. Outside your window, someone screams. Maybe it's a training exercise. Maybe it's Pierre. Eventually, they teach you how to blend in. It's less about costume changes and more about body language. Walk like a local. Not too fast, not too slow. Look people in the eye, but not for too long. Don't smile unless someone else does first. Laugh only when appropriate. Never point. Never fidget. Never sneeze unless it's windy. The goal is to become invisible, a human background object. The lamp of the crowd. Then it's time for radios. They hand you a wireless set that weighs as much as a goat. You have to carry it, hide it, set it up, power it, calibrate it, send encrypted messages in Morse code, and take it all down in under 5 minutes. You fail the first time, and the second. On the third, you manage to send "The eagle flies at dawn," followed by a string of gibberish that translates roughly to "My pants are on fire." They ask if it's a code. You nod. It's not. You practice sabotage. Not the fun movie kind. The real, grinding, dirty kind. You're taught how to blow up railway tracks using timed charges made from things that don't sound explosive, like flour or condensed milk. You drill holes in fake fuel tanks. You set fire to haystacks. You destroy telegraph lines with scissors and shame. One day, you accidentally set your own sock on fire during a train derailment simulation. You're told that counts as a partial success. And just when you think you might finally be getting the hang of things, just when you no longer flinch when someone shouts your alias across a crowded courtyard, they surprise you with the final test, simulated capture. You're walking through the woods on a casual assignment when a group of local militia ambushes you. They put a bag over your head and drag you into a shed. You're tied to a chair. Someone shouts in broken French, Another slaps the table. You're asked where the weapons are hidden, where your radio is, what your signal is. You lie. Convincingly. You hold firm. You channel all the grit and training and silent prayers to Eleanor Roosevelt. Then they ask your real name. You panic. You tell them it's Frank. It's not. They smile. You fail. They untie you. Pat your shoulder. Say it happens to everyone. But you see the look in their eyes. It's the look that says, you'd be dead. The war would move on without you. Your radio would be captured. Your codes broken. Your contacts tortured. And no one back home would ever know. You spend the night staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of distant boots, wondering how much more of yourself you're willing to lose to become someone else entirely. By the end of it all, you're a different creature. You move differently. Think differently. Your smile is crooked now. Your heartbeat doesn't flinch when someone screams down the hall. You dream in Morse code. You lie better than you breathe. Then without warning, they tell you it's time. You're ready. You're given your final identity. A map. A mission. A plane ticket you're not supposed to use. And a pill. The kind you only swallow if you're cornered, outnumbered, and unwilling to be remembered as that guy who cracked under pressure and told the enemy about the supply route near the village. You leave without saying goodbye. There's no graduation, no handshake, no photo. Just the sound of your boots walking across the gravel and the knowledge that from now on you're alone, completely deliberately and terminally alone. You're standing in a freezing barn somewhere in the British countryside. It's raining, because of course it is. You haven't slept in 2 days, and your last meal was a biscuit that tasted like it lost the will to live sometime during the Great War. Your coat smells like betrayal and mildew, and now they hand you a box. Not a glamorous briefcase, not some gleaming velvet-lined showcase, no. A wooden crate, like someone packed up regret and shipped it overseas. Inside are your tools, your weapons, your best chance of survival, also your worst enemies. They call it your field kit. You call it a lawsuit waiting to happen. Everything inside is technically useful. Every item also has a 40% chance of malfunctioning and a 100% chance of raising suspicion if you drop it in front of a Nazi. The first thing you're shown is a knife. Simple, unmarked, deadly. You're told it can slit a throat, cut wires, open crates, or spread jam, if you're living long enough to enjoy jam. You're also told never to throw it. Movies lie. Knives don't come back. They get stuck in a wall, clang to the ground, or end up buried in a guy's thigh, while he continues stabbing you with something larger. So you keep the knife. Quiet, close, always sharp, like paranoia. Then they give you a pistol, a small one, sleek, the kind of thing that fits in a coat pocket and still makes your armpits sweat. It's a 22, or maybe a 32, depending on what the quartermaster had lying around. You're told to use it only when absolutely necessary, which, judging by the scenarios they run, is always 5 minutes ago. The recoil is laughable. The sound is not. If you shoot it, expect to be heard. By Germans with bigger guns. You're handed extra bullets, each one lovingly wrapped in tissue paper, like some macabre Christmas stocking stuffer. You count them. You count them again. You know you'll count them every night like they're sheep, except instead of helping you sleep, they remind you that each click could be your last. Next up, the radio. It's not really a radio. It's a box the size of a small microwave filled with wires, tubes and desperation. The kind of thing that could either summon allied planes or explode and send your eardrum into orbit. You're told to transmit quickly, never in the same place twice, and never longer than 20 minutes. You practice setting it up, coiling wires, adjusting knobs, waiting for the little green flicker that says, yes, someone might be listening. You pray it's the right someone. The codebook is next. A small, leather-bound notebook filled with gibberish that only makes sense if you're sleep-deprived, flu-ridden, and fluent in chaos. You memorize the cipher. You eat the cover page. You bury the rest somewhere no one would think to look, like inside a fake wheel of cheese or sewn into your underwear. You start seeing code in everything. Cracks in the wall, coughs in the hallway, the number of rats under your bed. Nothing is innocent now. Then comes the fun stuff. The sabotage gear. Because nothing says freedom fighter like carrying a satchel full of creative death. You get a tube of plastic explosives. Moldable, versatile, smells faintly like death and mint. You're taught how to use it to take out bridges, vehicles, or doors with opinions. It's called Nobel 808, but you start calling it that thing I pray I didn't sit on. Next, time pencils. They look like innocuous little sticks. Inside, a vile cocktail of chemicals that eats through a wire after a set time. You can adjust the fuse based on temperature, humidity, and how lucky you're feeling. You practice setting one to detonate in 30 minutes. It goes off in 12. You smile. Everyone around you ducks. You're introduced to the exploding rat. Yes, you heard right. A dead rat, hollowed out, filled with explosives. The idea? Toss one into a factory furnace. It explodes. Machinery breaks. Chaos ensues. You try not to look at it too long. The expression on its face says, even I didn't sign up for this. You also get coal bombs. Black lumps of disguised explosives. The kind you sneak onto a train or into a coal bin. They ignite, explode, and make every fireman scream the French equivalent of, "Oh no, not again." You pocket one, then reconsider and put it in a lined pouch far from your leg. Now we move into the truly deranged sabotage condoms. Not what you think. Filled with oil or corrosive paste. Stuff them in enemy fuel tanks and walk away like a weirdly patriotic pervert. If you're lucky, the truck won't start. If you're unlucky, it explodes while you're still explaining to a passerby why you're shoving rubber into a gas tank at dusk. Then there's the knife disguised as a comb. Looks like grooming. Functions like vengeance. Except it tangles in your pocket, snaps open too early, and nearly amputates your thumb. You're told to keep practicing. You're told not to bleed on the cipher book. Next, a lipstick that contains cyanide. Not for enemies, for you. A last resort. You're told, in clinical tones, that if capture is certain, and resistance is futile, and torture is a guarantee, you press it to your tongue and bite. The taste is bitter almond and instant silence. You try not to think about it. It sits in your kit like a dark secret, silently judging your optimism. You also receive a hollow heel in your shoe, for maps, or microfilm, or little notes with things like "Get out now" written on them in panicked all caps. You practice walking with it. It squeaks. You are assured this is normal. You're not assured that it won't fall out mid-run and lead to your rapid, bullet-riddled demise. Your contact gear includes fake ID cards made with love, ink, and a deep misunderstanding of typography. One of your forgeries says you're a Swiss yodeling instructor. Another lists your age as 62. You're 27. You ask for a new one. They say no. You're handed German currency that smells like printer ink and fraud. You're told to memorise serial numbers because real Nazis check those things. You do. And then you forget your birthday. There are also invisible ink pens. One uses lemon juice. Another uses your own sweat. You try both. The lemon one works. The sweat one smells like failure and old bread. You send a test message. The cat has fleas. Someone sends back, that is not the agreed code. You cry. Then you're given your emergency survival kit. It includes a compass disguised as a button, a map printed on silk, a tiny saw in your collar, a needle and thread, not for sewing, a small amount of morphine, definitely for emergencies, probably misused, and a vial of antibiotics which you will guard more closely than your soul. Finally, your handlers give you the one thing no spy should leave without. A story. The whole thing. Start to finish. Where you're from. Who your family is. Why you're travelling. What your dog's name was. What kind of wine your father drank. It has to be flawless. You have to believe it so hard that when someone questions you, you feel insulted. You recite it in your sleep. You dream of being someone else. You wake up and forget who you are. That means it's working. You pack it all into a suitcase that looks too innocent for what it contains. You strap the radio to your back. You feel the weight of explosives, maps, lies, and exit plans press against your ribs. You try to breathe like you're not a human tinderbox waiting to be frisked. This is it. You're armed, wired, equipped, and possibly insane. Tomorrow you'll be on a plane again, or a boat, or a truck, or crouched in a hay cart next to a donkey named Claude. You'll slip across borders. You'll smile at guards. You'll shake hands with traitors and pass notes to ghosts. And through it all, this kit, this absurd, terrifying slapdash bundle of murder and hope, is all that stands between you and a shallow grave under someone else's name. It's a cool morning in southern France. You're standing in a line at a bakery that's out of bread, pretending to be someone who isn't quietly sweating through your shirt and clutching fake identification. The man behind you is smoking something that smells like old books and dread. A German officer stands across the street, hands on his belt, eyes scanning the crowd like he's shopping for someone to interrogate. And you're supposed to look casual, relaxed, like you were born in this war-torn village, grew up with these cracked walls and this accent you barely understand, and have absolutely nothing to hide. You nod at the officer. He doesn't nod back. This is disguise. Not the theatrical kind. No fake noses or Mission Impossible masks. Just layers of clothing, posture, and fabricated memories built on a trembling pile of paperwork. It's not about looking like someone else. It's about convincing yourself that you already are. They taught you in training, never just wear a disguise. Become it. Breathe it in. Let it crawl under your skin and lay eggs. Because the first person who has to believe your cover is you. The second. A man with a Luger and a clipboard. It starts with clothes. You're handed a full outfit. French civilian garb. Circa 3 years out of fashion and 5 years out of soap. A frayed jacket with a loose button. Threadbare trousers with suspicious stains that may or may not be mustard. Thick wool socks. No one in the OSS can explain why, but they always smell like despair. Your shoes are heavy, cracked, and squeak when you move too quickly, which is a great way to die nervously in an alley. You try on your new identity, literally. Everything from your shoes to your shoelaces is part of your story. Will this man wear polished boots? No, he works in a paper mill. Would he shave every day? only if he's trying too hard. You scuff your own knees. You tear a tiny hole in your shirt. You sleep in the clothes for a night just to make them more miserable. You want to feel poor, desperate, and invisible. Your haircut? Changed, rough, uneven. Your face? Dirty, always a little sunburned, as if you've been outside working for hours instead of hiding in attics with a radio and a loaded pistol. You avoid mirrors. Your reflection looks like someone who's seen too much and eaten too little, which is exactly what you're going for. Then comes the paperwork. Identity cards, ration books, work permits, travel vouchers, personal letters. All forged, all fragile, all your responsibility. If the Gestapo catches a typo or the wrong stamp, that's not a clerical error. That's a one-way ticket to a concrete room with too many drains. You memorise everything. Birthplace, Vichy. Occupation, textile clerk. Religion, Catholic obviously. Wife, Martine. Dead in childbirth, rest her soul. Son, Alain, taken in the draft. You write a letter from him to yourself, fold it until it looks dog-eared, and keep it in your pocket for emotional credibility. You cry the first time you read it. A week later, you feel nothing. That's progress. Accents are next. You practice in the mirror, then with your handler, then with a drunk Frenchman who laughs and tells you your vowels sound like a cow trying to yawn. You practice more. You learn not to say uh-huh or yep or right, because no one in southern France says that unless they're a spy or a moron. You become fluent in non-verbal shrugs, scoffs, and that one noise French people make that somehow means, I acknowledge your existence, but wish I didn't have to. Behavioural disguise matters too. You learn how to smoke without looking like an American. You practice lighting cigarettes with matches, not lighters. You ash with a flick, not a tap. You don't inhale too deep. And you always keep your left hand in your coat like you're hiding a heart condition, not a gun. You change the way you walk. Americans walk with purpose. French peasants shuffle like the day is dragging them. You adjust your stride. You slouch. You mumble. You learn the art of saying nothing in 30 different ways. When someone looks at you too long, you pretend to be preoccupied with your shoelace. When someone asks you what time it is, you don't panic. You say time for more work and keep walking. Because every casual interaction is a potential interrogation in disguise. They also teach you how to eat like a local. You chew with your mouth closed. You learn the names of cheeses no one outside France has ever heard of. You never ask for butter. You never put sugar in your coffee unless you're trying to out yourself. You sip wine, you don't gulp it. And when someone offers you a second glass, you decline unless it's Sunday or someone died. Or both. Then there are the gestures. Americans nod up. Europeans nod down. Americans point with fingers. The French use chins, eyebrows, or long sighs. You stop using your hands. You start using your face. Your eyebrows now do half your communication. Your other half is silence. You learn to eavesdrop without turning your head. You practice watching people through windows, reflections and side glances. You keep your back to walls. You sit near exits. You become aware of footsteps, voices, cigarette smoke patterns, and who's wearing boots versus shoes. You no longer trust anyone in a hat. And then, just when you think you've settled into your new persona, you're told to build another one. This time, you're a Belgian electrician, or a Spanish dock worker, or a mute German gardener. You don't just have one identity, you have 3, maybe 4. Some are backup covers, some are emergencies, some are pure fantasy, fakes meant to distract, mislead, or delay your execution by 48 critical hours. You develop micro gestures to switch between them. When you scratch your ear, you're Marcel the janitor. When you limp, you're Franz the wounded soldier. When you hum a hymn, you're Klaus from Dusseldorf, allergic to daylight and inconvenient questions. You don't just play these roles, you become them. You write diary entries from their perspective. You develop imaginary memories. You argue with yourself in different voices just to stay sharp. At night, you dream in fragmented conversations that don't belong to you. In the morning, you can't remember which name to respond to. Paranoia becomes your roommate. You check your papers 10 times before breakfast. You test your accent ordering soup. You tell lies to waiters just for practice. When someone smiles at you, you wonder if it's genuine or just very professional Gestapo acting. And yet, somehow, it works. You pass checkpoints. You buy bread. You nod at neighbours. You slip into churches, cafes, and public toilets with the weary ease of someone who belongs. You become background. Forgettable. The best disguise of all. But it never gets easier. You flinch at sirens. You sweat when soldiers approach. Every time someone says your fake name, you brace for gunfire. You get used to the terror, but you never stop feeling it. You just hide it better. That's part of the uniform now too. Because in the world of espionage, survival doesn't belong to the smartest or strongest. It belongs to the best liar. You're crouched at a wooden table under a low bulb that flickers like it's nervous for you. Outside, rain taps against a single-paned window like a metronome set to dread. The floor creaks. Someone's pacing upstairs. You try not to imagine them rehearsing your eulogy. In front of you is a suitcase. Not a glamorous one. This is wartime. It's scuffed, brown, held together by rusted latches and the hope that nobody inspects it too closely. It smells like wet wool, old paper, and maybe fear. Your orders are simple. Pack for survival, which is adorable because nothing in this room suggests anyone actually survives. You start with the basics. Clothes. A single change. Already wrinkled and depressingly beige. One undershirt, 2 pairs of socks, 1 pair of underpants that's been mended so many times, it's technically more thread than fabric. You fold them like they're going to save your life. They won't. But you fold them anyway. Then come the documents. Your new identity. Hand-forged by a man with excellent penmanship and 0 moral boundaries. Birth certificate, work permit, ration booklet, family photo you've never seen before. In it, someone's supposed to be your mother. She has kind eyes and the faint expression of someone about to be shelled. You slip it between the pages of a worn Bible you've never read. The cover has been gently used for lying. You're given cash in several currencies. Francs, marks, lira, all crumpled, smudged, and potentially cursed. Some of it's real, some of it isn't. Doesn't matter. If you're being frisked by the Gestapo, the only thing they care about is how long it takes to start screaming. You fold the bills carefully, wrap them in a faded handkerchief, and wedge them into your shoe. That's what they taught you. Never keep everything in one place. That includes hope. Now the fun stuff. A tiny pistol, small enough to fit in your coat pocket, big enough to make someone regret their choices. It's been cleaned, oiled, and test-fired exactly once. You're told it'll jam if you breathe on it wrong. You smile politely, tuck it into the false bottom of the suitcase, and pray you never have to find out. Then there's the knife. Not a Bowie, not a combat blade. Just a thin, unmarked piece of steel designed to slip between bones without asking questions. You don't even get a sheath. Just a strip of cloth to wrap around the handle and the growing suspicion that you might not be the kind of person who could use it. Until you remember what happens if you don't. Next is the radio crystal. It looks like a dead insect inside a matchbox. It's the heart of your wireless kit. The one thing that lets you talk to London. Without it, you're just a very sweaty man in a coat with too many secrets and not enough friends. You're told to protect it with your life. You nod. You don't ask how many other people died doing exactly that. Your sabotage materials are packed in small tins that once held biscuits. They still smell faintly of disappointment. Inside, plastic explosives, thin as clay and twice as temperamental. You're told it won't detonate without a fuse. You're also told not to sit on it. Then come the time pencils. Tiny glass vials that start a countdown when snapped. They look like something that belongs in a dentist's drawer, but they're meant to make bridges disappear. You're given 2. One goes in your coat, the other wrapped in a sock and tucked near your toothbrush. Nothing says subtle like oral hygiene and high explosives. They give you coal bombs, realistic lumps of coal, except they're fake. You toss one into a fuel supply and wait for the fireworks. You're told to only carry 1. You're handed 3. You smile. You're starting to understand how this game works. There's also a tube of grease. Looks innocent, feels disgusting. You smear it inside engines, locks, mechanisms. Anything the enemy relies on. It clogs, corrodes, and collapses under pressure, like you, but on purpose. A small mirror is slipped into the suitcase. Not for grooming, for signals. Morse code in flashes of sunlight. Assuming the sun ever shows up and you're not being hunted in a sewer, it also doubles as a reminder of what you look like now. You avoid it. You're handed a compass the size of a coat button. You unscrew it from a fake cufflink and spin it gently. It wobbles. You're told that's normal. You suspect that's a lie. But lies are kind of the currency here. Then, the maps. Printed on silk so they don't crinkle or rot in the rain. They fold smaller than your patience and include escape routes, train schedules, and a rough sketch of terrain that may or may not have changed since last Tuesday. You roll them tightly and stuff them in the lining, next to a matchbook filled with nonsense that's actually code if you know which page of your book to cross-reference. You get a set of identification patches, armbands, insignia, forged badges, to help you blend into various local units or pretend you belong near a train. You're told not to wear them unless absolutely necessary. Which means, of course, you'll be wearing one by tomorrow afternoon while shouting about boiler pressure in a language you barely speak. There's a sewing kit with a hidden blade in the spool. A tin of shoe polish with a false compartment. A belt buckle that can be used to saw through rope if you twist it the right way. You stare at it for 10 minutes trying to figure out how. It doesn't matter. You'll either have time to learn or you won't. And finally, there's the capsule. You're told to call it the tablet, but no one does. It's cyanide, a single bite, a final breath, and peace, or at least the end of whatever they had planned for you. You're told not to keep it in your pocket. Too risky. Swallow it by accident, and your career ends in the middle of a sentence. You wrap it in wax paper and tuck it inside the false heel of your shoe. Then you tap your heel gently and try not to think about it again. You close the suitcase. It creaks like it knows it's going somewhere terrible. You latch the clasps. You tighten the straps. You breathe once, twice. You think about repacking it. You don't. You stand up slowly, feeling the weight. Not just the physical one, the emotional, psychological weight of carrying your death, your mission, your story, and your backup story, all in one creaky, deceptively innocent brown case. Tomorrow you'll carry it across a border, or through a checkpoint, or past a man who smiles too much and wears polished boots. And when he asks what's inside, you'll say clothes, personal effects, maybe a gift for a friend, and you'll smile like it's the truth. The envelope is thin, cream-coloured, official, but in the kind of way that makes your stomach drop. It's handed to you in silence by a man who doesn't introduce himself, doesn't blink, and probably doesn't sleep. He gestures at a chair like it's a suggestion, not an option. You sit. He opens the envelope, pulls out a folded dossier. It's already yellowed at the edges. Either it's been reused, or they've aged it to make your fake life feel more authentic. You wouldn't put it past them? He clears his throat. Your name is Julian Moreau. You nod like it's not your fifth name in 6 months. You're from Châteauroux. You blink. Is that in the north? The south? Are there cows there? He doesn't wait for your questions. You're not supposed to have any. You were born February 3rd, 1907, son of Antoine and Marguerite. Father was a carpenter, mother made lace, both dead, Spanish flu. You file this under things to sound sad about when asked. You completed 2 years of vocational school. You were not an exceptional student. Of course not. You were conscripted in 1927, discharged in 1929. You have a slight limp from a fall in a sawmill. You've worked odd jobs ever since. Currently, coal handler. It's impressive how thoroughly your fake life sucks. They've handcrafted mediocrity with the care of an artisan. You're not heroic, not tragic, just forgettable. And that's the point. No one remembers the guy who handles coal. He slides over a set of documents. Birth certificate, ID card, labour book, travel pass, ration coupons. They're all flawless, and by flawless you mean passable in poor lighting if the person checking them is hungover. You handle them like they're made of nitroglycerin. They sort of are. He tells you your favourite colour is green, that you once had a dog named Biscuits, that you prefer cabbage to carrots and have a missing cousin in Toulouse. It's all part of the file. None of it is true. All of it has to be real. You rehearse your backstory. Not in front of a mirror. Those aren't allowed anymore. Too easy to start recognising yourself. And that's a problem. You practice while eating, while shaving, while walking alone. Julian Moreau, Châteauroux. Mother-made lace. You get it down cold. You start correcting people when they call you by your real name. Not out of discipline, out of reflex. They give you memories. Not real ones, constructed ones. You're supposed to remember the bakery that burned down when you were 10. The boy from school who drowned in the river. The priest who scolded you for stealing apples. You recite these details until they feel more familiar than your actual childhood. One day you hear yourself laugh and think, that sounds like Julian. And it does. That's when you know it's working. Your new clothes arrive. Worn trousers, patched at the knee. A thick wool jacket with a missing button. A shirt that smells like someone else's sweat and your future anxiety. You put them on. They don't fit quite right. They're not supposed to. Real people don't wear tailored clothes in a war zone. Your accent has been tuned. Neutral, slightly rural. No Parisian affectation. too suspicious. You learn how to say your hometown with the right lilt. Châteauroux, like there's a sigh hidden inside it. You drop the R's just enough. Your trainer slaps the back of your head every time you slip back into American vowels. You stop slipping. Your tongue starts cooperating. You're proud. And then ashamed of being proud. You get a wallet. Inside is your ID, a note from your supposed sister. Julian, don't forget your boots this time. And a receipt for a shoe repair you never picked up. Details. The little stuff. That's what makes the lie breathe. That's what keeps you alive when a border guard asks you where the best cafe is in Châteauroux, and you don't pause before answering. They take your old papers. Burn them in a steel bin. You watch the flames eat your past. There's a photo of you and your real sister in one of them. You don't flinch. That's a test too. You're told to avoid mirrors from now on. People who stare at themselves too long remember the wrong man. You start looking at your reflection only in puddles. It's blurrier, less judgmental, more accurate. You practice signatures. Over and over. Julian Moreau. Julian M. Julian with a flourish. Julian when you're in a hurry. Julian when you're afraid. You write it in pencil, ink, chalk, dirt. You write it in the dark with your eyes closed. You wake up murmuring it. At night, you talk to your fake family. Bonjour maman, je suis rentré. You say it quietly, half joking, half something else. No one laughs. You're given a second alias, a backup, just in case. This one is German. Otto Lieber, shoe trader, from Cologne. You don't like Otto. Otto feels cold, sterile. You prefer Julian. Julian has regrets. Otto has objectives. You keep Otto folded in a separate pocket, just close enough to reach if things go very, very wrong. Eventually they stop calling you by your real name. No one says it. No one even remembers it. You're Julian now. Julian with the soft eyes and the coal-dusted jacket. Julian who hums hymns in the morning and doesn't quite look anyone in the eye. And just when you finally started believing it, truly absorbing the identity, living the lie, they come for you. Your handler knocks once, hands you a fresh envelope, and says, "It's time." You nod. Julian nods. You grab your suitcase, the one packed with quiet violence and careful deceit. You walk out the door and leave everything else behind, including yourself. You arrive in the dead of night, not in a car, not by train. You're delivered like a bad secret, via bicycle and silence. Your contact says nothing, just points to a narrow alley behind a shuttered bakery, then disappears into the fog like a man late for a disappointment. You step into the flat above the shop. One room, no heat. One chair, a sink that drips with the persistence of guilt. There's a bed, well, a pile of cloth near a wall with suspicious stains. A faded calendar still hangs crookedly from 1941. It is not 1941. You hang your coat. You unpack your lies. You wait. This is life now. Your name is Julian. You live here. You've always lived here. Also the neighbours are supposed to believe. So you memorise everything. The creaky stair, the pattern of the wallpaper mould, the sound the front door makes when it lies to the wind. You rehearse your alibi until it aches. You pray no one asks you what year the bakery closed. You practice saying, "I don't remember," in a way that sounds like you genuinely don't. Not like you're buying time to load a gun. Occupied Europe isn't dramatic. It's quiet. The kind of quiet that presses into your chest at 3 a.m. and whispers, "They're coming," but they don't. Not yet. That's the genius of it. The occupation doesn't shout. It watches. The streets during the day are subdued. People move like they're walking through water. Slow, cautious, hunched. No one makes eye contact. No one smiles. You nod to neighbours with a face that says, "Don't talk to me." And they nod back with a face that says, "I wasn't going to." The German soldiers are always nearby. At checkpoints, leaning against cafes, standing at corners with cigarettes and the kind of posture that says they've been told they own the place. Their uniforms are crisp, their eyes are tired, they laugh sometimes. You try not to look. You walk like someone with nothing to hide. It's harder than it sounds. Every step feels like a confession. Every glance a test. You pass by a line for bread that stretches down the block. The people waiting barely murmur. One woman clutches a string bag like it's hope. You nod. She doesn't nod back. Your job, officially, is coal delivery. Unofficially, it's survival. You carry sacks, you knock on doors, you keep your head down, you complain about the weather. You say things like, "What can you do?" and "Maybe next week will be better." And no one believes you, which means you're doing it right. There is no good food, no fresh food, just grey bread, thin soup, root vegetables that look like they've been punished. Butter is myth. Meat is memory. Coffee is something else. It's not coffee, it's a suggestion. Burned chicory, acorns, crushed misery. You drink it anyway. It keeps your hands from shaking. Everything tastes like ash or regret. You eat standing up. You eat quickly. You don't eat with company, even if you had any. Mail arrives sometimes. Carefully opened, sloppily resealed. A postcard from a fake cousin. A letter from your aunt, written in code. You decipher it under a single lamp bulb, burn it, then flush the ashes. Even your waste is suspicious. Nights or worse, the curfew is strict. Lights out means lights out. One flicker behind a curtain, and you could be explaining yourself to a man with a pistol and poor impulse control. You huddle near a candle, barely breathing, listening to the ticking of a watch that might be counting down your life. You hear boots sometimes, in the stairwell, on the street, pausing, moving again. Each time your lungs forget how to operate, then they pass. This is the rhythm now. Terror, pause, repeat. You sleep in your clothes. The bag is packed. The radio is hidden. The knife is within reach. You don't dream anymore. Not because you're brave, because your brain knows better. Once a week you visit a market. Not because you need anything, because Julian would. You barter for onions or nails or a tin of something unlabelled and vaguely illegal. The vendors don't smile. One of them stares a little too long. You cough. He looks away. You leave early. There's a dog in the alley, a mutt, one ear, 3 teeth, and the gaze of a man who's seen things. You feed it scraps sometimes. Not because you like dogs, because you want someone to remember your scent if you disappear. The resistance contacts are ghosts. You don't meet in groups, you meet in gestures. A dropped glove, a red scarf, a phrase like, "The chimney's smoking early today." You nod. You pass the message. You walk away. You never look back. You never ask names. That's for the best. Names are the first thing to break under torture. You learn to live inside the pauses. The hours between broadcasts. The seconds between footsteps. You become hypersensitive to silence. You start timing how long it takes your neighbours to lock their door. One night, it's later than usual. You make a note of it. You don't know why, just in case. The radio is a beast, heavy, loud, temperamental. You unearth it only when the building is silent and the wind is loud. You plug in the crystal. You tune the frequency. You listen to static. You key out your message, Short, clipped, meaningless to anyone who isn't also pretending to be someone else. Then you bury the radio again, deep beneath the loose floorboard under the rug that doesn't match anything. You replace everything carefully. You wait. You don't sleep that night. You don't sleep the next one either. You see a man arrested outside your building. He doesn't resist. He barely blinks. The soldiers don't shout. They just take him. The neighbours close their shutters. The dog doesn't bark. The silence is unbearable. You don't ask what he did. You already know. He existed too loudly. The next morning, someone chalks a small mark on your doorframe. A triangle, gone by noon. You wipe the sweat from your neck. You start packing slowly. Not to flee, just to be ready. Just in case. This is how you live now. Not in fear, exactly. In proximity to it. Like sharing a room with a bomb that hasn't decided if it wants to go off yet. You carry your name like a passport through a minefield. Julian Moreau, coal handler, son of Marguerite. You tell yourself he's real. That somewhere, deep down, this is who you are. You believe it just enough to get through the day. And then you do it again. The first thing they tell you is never write anything down. The second thing they tell you is write everything down, but make it look like something else. This is the contradiction you live with now. Communication is your job, but also your greatest liability. Every note, every name, every whisper between the lines is a potential death sentence, not just for you, but for someone else. So you learn how to say everything while saying nothing at all. It starts with the laundry. You've never been so invested in wet clothing. A shirt on a line isn't just a shirt. It's a signal. One sleeve pinned higher than the other. Message received. A red scarf clipped next to a towel. Change meeting location. A white undershirt hanging by itself for more than 6 hours. Danger. Abort. You memorize patterns like your life depends on it. Because it does. The courtyard behind your building becomes a choreographed ballet of flapping fabric and barely contained anxiety. One time, someone hangs out bedsheets too early. You freeze. You stare at the fabric like it insulted your mother. Then the sheets come down, and nothing happens. But you don't sleep that night. The wind knocks against your window, like it knows what almost went wrong. Your neighbour, a woman named Estelle, becomes your accidental handler. You've never spoken more than 5 words to her, but she's the one who leaves handkerchiefs folded in certain ways on her balcony rail. The one who accidentally drops her laundry basket in front of your door when she has a message. You help her pick it up like a good neighbour. Inside, tucked between socks, a matchbox with a scrap of coded gibberish that's actually a rendezvous point if you're lucky. If you're not, it's a test. If you're really unlucky, it's bait. Then there's toothpaste. Not the kind that freshens breath. That ship has sailed. This is thick, chalky paste in a cracked metal tube that smells faintly of despair and baking soda. You unscrew the cap. You squeeze it. Nothing happens. Then you squeeze harder. Out comes a scroll, tightly wound and wrapped in wax paper. You unroll it with tweezers. The message is written in microtext, so small you need a magnifying lens just to confirm it isn't a joke. You read it twice. You burn it 3 times. The tools of your trade are household items twisted into treason. Razor blades with etched coordinates. Soap bars hollowed out to hold microfilm. A sewing needle threaded with invisible ink instructions that reveal themselves only after being soaked in vinegar and warmed over a candle flame. Your room smells like a failed science experiment and anxiety. Your notebook, the one labelled grocery list, doesn't actually contain any groceries. Each letter corresponds to a cipher, each fake item hiding a real command. You memorise the conversions. You burn the original key. You rewrite the whole thing again in case you forget. Then you forget what actual groceries are. Someone asks you for onions and you panic. You're taught to use lemon juice as ink, milk, sweat, anything acidic. You scribble messages between lines of a newspaper. The ink dries invisible. You iron it with a warm pan. Letters appear. Sometimes. Other times, you just ruin another copy of Le Petit Journal and wonder if this is how your obituary will start. Mail becomes a performance art. You send letters to people who don't exist. One to Aunt Bernadette in Marseille with a postcard inside, a picture of a bridge that's definitely going to explode next Tuesday. You say you hope to visit it again someday. She never writes back. Good. That means she's still fictional. One message is hidden in the stitching of your collar. Another is scratched onto the inside of a bottle cap. You drop it near a park bench and keep walking. 10 minutes later, a boy with a limp picks it up and disappears into a bakery. You hope it worked? You don't know. That's the rule. Deliver the message. Never ask if it was received. Sometimes you get verbal drops. A butcher says, "The lamb is fresh today." That means a shipment's coming in. If he says, "The lamb is salted," it means someone got caught. If he just stares at you and says nothing, it's time to leave the city. You memorise poems. Lines from Victor Hugo, Baudelaire. Not because you're literary, because they're ciphers. A specific word in the fourth stanza, paired with a date, reveals the target. If someone asks your favourite poem and you say the wrong one, you've just volunteered for execution. So you recite them in your head while peeling potatoes, like a very dramatic kitchen ghost. Everyday items become loaded. A book of matches placed on the edge of a cafe table. A newspaper folded with a crossword facing outward. A single cigarette left on a windowsill. A pencil sharpened too aggressively. These are all signals. Some of them are real. Some are false. Some are so outdated that even the resistance doesn't remember what they mean anymore. But you still react to everyone, just in case. A child hands you a drawing. You smile. You thank him. The drawing shows a house with 4 windows. One of them is blacked out. The boy leaves. You study the picture. The blackout window is an address. You memorise it. Burn the drawing. Watch the ash float down a drain. The local barber has a code too. He asks, "Would you like the usual trim?" If you say yes, he knows to expect a message later. If you say no, it means someone's watching. You never get your hair cut. You go anyway. You're handed a loaf of bread. It's slightly too heavy. You break it open and find a film reel stuffed inside, still warm from the oven. You smile at the baker. He nods like he just gave you an extra croissant. You tip him with counterfeit francs. He doesn't care. You both understand the exchange. You walk home thinking about how absurd this all is. Smuggling classified intel inside sourdough. The Nazis would never suspect. Probably. You go to a tailor. You ask him to fix your jacket. He turns it inside out and finds a message sewn into the lining. It wasn't his work. He nods once, says nothing, hands you back the coat. It fits better somehow. You say thank you. You pay. You leave. You check your pocket for explosives. They're still there. Good. Some nights you get messages on the radio. Not from London. From another source. Unknown. A voice says, "The pigeons have flown." Or, the field is muddy. You write it down. You wait for a second voice to contradict it. If it doesn't, you move. If it does, you burn the first message. You don't keep both. You're not greedy. Eventually, your brain becomes a decoder ring. You forget how to talk to people normally. You pause after every sentence, wondering what it really means. Someone says, "It's cold out," and you wonder if it's code for "you're compromised." Someone offers you soup, and you wonder if the carrots are arranged in Morse code. You stop trusting language, even your own, which is fine, because the war doesn't need poets right now. It needs survivors. You don't get confirmation that your messages are working. You don't get thanks. You don't get replies. You get glances, delayed reactions. A woman you've never met places her shopping basket 2 tiles to the left. It's enough. You get used to speaking in absences, to writing without writing, to living between the lines. Because in this life, the best thing a message can be is invisible. You're in a field just outside town. The sky's grey. The mud is soft. Your boots are soaked, and your coat smells like yesterday's rain and tomorrow's regret. You're waiting for someone who might be your contact, or might be someone else's contact, or might be no one at all. In any case, you're standing next to a cow. She stares at you like she knows things. You stare back. Because at this point, anything with eyes is suspicious. This is the rule now, the one they whispered at you before your first drop. Trust no one. You thought they were being dramatic, maybe paranoid. They weren't. Your handler said it bluntly. Everyone is a potential threat. That includes your neighbours, your landlord, your priest, your dog, and yes, even your reflection if it starts acting weird. You laughed. He didn't. So here you are, living in a world where smiles are loaded, handshakes are potential traps, and small talk is an open invitation to die stupidly in an alley. You suspect the milkman, mostly because he's never late. Who shows up that consistently in wartime? A man with secrets, that's who. His cart never rattles, his shoes never squeak. One time you tried to follow him. He disappeared behind a hedge and never came out. You waited 2 hours. Eventually, you started suspecting the hedge. The local priest has kind eyes. Too kind. You confessed to stealing bread just to see how he'd react. He smiled and said, "God forgives." You didn't believe him. You haven't gone back. You're not even religious. That's not the point. Your upstairs neighbour plays the violin badly and alone. One night you heard him switch to the flute. Then the next morning, a resistance message comes through. The canary has left the cage. Coincidence? Maybe. But the guy plays like someone hiding sheet music in sin. There's a child, about 7, who always seems to be loitering near your building. Skipping rope, drawing on the curb, singing badly translated American songs. One day she stops and says, "You're not really from Châteauroux, are you?" You blink. She giggles, runs off. You move apartments that night. Trust is currency you no longer carry. You spend your days exchanging pleasantries with strangers and wondering which one is going to get you killed by accident, or on purpose, or for a baguette. And you meet a man named Jacques in a bakery. He offers you a cigarette. That's it. Just a cigarette. You hesitate. He smiles. Says his cousin knew your cousin. You didn't mention having a cousin. You take the cigarette. You don't smoke it. You don't sleep for 2 days. Even within the resistance, trust is rationed. You know only 3 people by name, and even those might be fake. One woman you call Colette speaks in riddles. always wears gloves. Once handed you a loaf of bread with a razor blade baked into it. When you asked why, she said, "Sometimes the message is in the crust." You never figured out what that meant. Another contact. Henri smells like motor oil and doesn't blink. He once greeted you by asking how your pet rabbit was doing. You don't have a pet rabbit. That was the signal phrase. But for 3 terrifying seconds, you thought he was just making weird conversation. The most trustworthy man you meet wears a butcher's apron and never speaks. He hands you a wrapped package every Friday. Inside is meat. Real, illegal meat. No messages, no codes, just food. You trust him more than your handler, which is probably a mistake. One day you get a letter, hand-delivered. No return address. Inside, a photo of you taken 2 days ago. You don't recognise the angle. You don't remember the moment. You burn it. Then you check every window you passed that day. One has curtains that twitch. You move again. A German soldier waves at you one afternoon. Just a polite wave. Maybe he's being friendly. Maybe he's testing you. Maybe he knows. You wave back. Your hand trembles. He walks away. You wait 2 hours before leaving the alley. Even the animals are suspicious. You see the same cat 3 times on 3 different streets. Its tail has a kink in it. You think it's following you. Then you remember you're not important enough for feline surveillance. Probably. Still, you start feeding it, just in case. There's a goat tethered outside a farm near your radio drop zone. It never bleats. It never moves. You think it's a statue until it looks at you. Just once. That's enough. You find a new route. You're not paranoid. You're prepared. That's what you tell yourself. But every day it gets harder to tell the difference. Between caution and obsession. Between vigilance and madness. Because the betrayals aren't dramatic. They don't come with a violin sting or a knife in the back. They come with a casual glance, a moment of hesitation, a name mentioned that shouldn't have been, a letter intercepted, a contact who doesn't show. You once trusted someone named Claude. He helped you send 3 messages. On the 4th, he asked too many questions. On the 5th, he was arrested. You heard him scream 3 streets away. You haven't trusted anyone named Claude since, or anyone who likes apricot jam, which Claude once said was underrated. Now it's on your list of warning signs. You've developed rules. Never meet in the same cafe twice. Never sit with your back to the door. Never enter a room without an exit. Never order tea. Tea is too slow. You want a drink you can throw in someone's face if things go sideways. Coffee works, even fake coffee. You sleep with a knife under your pillow and a second one taped to the underside of your bed. You check the door twice, then a 3rd time just to be sure. You memorise your neighbour's routines. If someone opens their window 10 minutes late, you take a different route to the bakery. One morning, you hear a whistle. 2 notes. Rising. A bird call, except no birds live on your block. You freeze. You count to 10. The call repeats. You pack your radio, your files, your final letter to a cousin who doesn't exist, and you leave. That night, the building burns down. Officially, it was an electrical fault. Unofficially, it was Claude's brother, or the violin player, or maybe even the milkman. Doesn't matter. You were gone. And you stayed gone. Because in this life, the only people who live long enough to regret anything are the ones who never assume they're safe, who don't get comfortable, who learn to see betrayal in every handshake, every smile, every plate of suspiciously timed stew. You trust no one, not even the cow. and especially not the cow. You didn't plan to get caught. Nobody ever does. That's the thing about espionage. It's not a job, it's a game of don't mess up. And eventually you do. Maybe you drop a name. Maybe you take the wrong train. Maybe you cough at the wrong time, and someone realises your French accent is 2% too Swiss. Either way, you're in the back of a truck now, blindfolded, hands tied, knees pressed against a metal floor that smells like rain and bad luck. You try to focus on your breathing. You try to remember the exact moment you lost control. Was it the milkman? That kid with the jump rope? Or that dog that never blinked? You don't get time to figure it out. The truck stops. They haul you out like a sack of potatoes with secrets. You stumble. You're shoved. A door slams behind you and suddenly the air changes. It smells like sweat, stale cigarettes, and institutional cruelty. You're inside a holding facility. Probably Gestapo. Possibly worse. No one tells you anything. They don't need to. You're in the place. The chair is wooden, uncomfortable on purpose. You're tied to it, not for security, for effect. The rope doesn't bite your skin. It whispers. It says, stay a while. The room is mostly empty. One light, one table. One man in a uniform that fits a little too well. He doesn't introduce himself. He already knows your name. Or thinks he does. He says it aloud. Julian Moreau. Coal handler. You correct him. Moreau with an X. You lie. He doesn't laugh. He begins with questions. Soft ones. Warm-up questions. Where were you born? Do you have siblings? What's your mother's maiden name? You answer like a man who still believes this will go smoothly. You even add a shrug for flair. Then he asks, why were you seen near the rail yard? And the game begins. You say you were delivering coal. He says there's no coal yard there. You say you were lost. He says you've lived in that neighbourhood for 6 months. You say nothing. He sighs. A second man enters. This one doesn't speak at all. He just sets down a metal tray. On it, a pitcher of water, a towel, a pair of pliers, and something that looks like a dentist's instrument redesigned by someone with unresolved issues. You swallow. Quietly. You think about the pill in your heel. You wonder if this is the moment. But then the first man smiles. We just want to talk, he says. Sure you do. They untie one hand, offer you a cigarette, you take it. Because refusing is suspicious, and accepting is a small victory. You try to light it with calm hands. You fail. He lights it for you. The match smells like sulphur and mockery. You know, he says, we don't want to hurt you. You believe him. Because he doesn't have to. That's what the other guy is for. He leaves. The second man steps forward. You learn his name isn't important. What matters is that he never raises his voice. He's not angry. He's not in a hurry. He's just very good at his job. First comes the cold. They pour water on your head, slow and deliberate. It's not to drown you, not yet. It's to wear you down, to soften the edges of your certainty. You start shivering. They ask if you're ready to talk. You say you don't understand the question. He slaps you, not hard. Just enough to say, yes you do. Next, the pain. Not dramatic pain, not movie pain, subtle, creeping pain. Fingernails bent back just slightly. Toes crushed slowly under boots. The kind of hurt that doesn't scream. It seeps. They hit your kidneys once. Just once. It's enough to make you see stars and regret every meaningful moment of your life. They pause. Offer another cigarette. You refuse this time. You taste blood when you breathe. They ask again. You lie. They nod. Like it's expected. The questions get weirder. Who do you report to? Where's the radio? What is the phrase for initiating a drop? You respond with shrugs, jokes, stammers. You pretend to be dumb. You pretend to be scared. Eventually, you don't have to pretend. One of them pulls out your forged papers, flips through them, points out the printing error on the 3rd page. You hadn't noticed. They had. The room gets colder. They let you sit in silence for an hour. Maybe longer. Just you, your thoughts, and the growing suspicion that your contacts have already been arrested. That this was all a waste. That you were never meant to get this far. You whisper your alias to yourself, just to remember who you're supposed to be. They come back. Offer tea. You drink it. It tastes like metal and despair. Then they show you a photo. It's your face, taken 3 days ago. The caption underneath is a name that's not Julian Moreau. They don't say anything. They don't have to. They know. You take a breath. You smile, and then you lie again. Not because you're brave, not because you think it'll work, but because it's all you've got left. And maybe, just maybe, you're the distraction. Maybe someone else is getting away right now while you bleed into your socks and practice forgetting everything that ever mattered. That's your role now. A ghost with a cover story. A man who says nothing and means everything. You weren't supposed to need an escape plan. Theoretically, if you did your job right, if the drops went through, the codes held, the contacts stayed loyal, you'd never need to run. You'd fade out gracefully, disappear behind a false name and a train ticket, and leave your story behind like a coat at a party you're glad to be leaving. But now, you're limping through a wheat field under a moon that won't shut up, with a gunshot wound in your thigh, a half-burned map in your pocket, and absolutely no idea where the hell you are. Which is exactly why they trained you for this. Because it was never a question of if, only when. You get to the tree line just before the dogs catch your scent. Maybe they weren't dogs. Maybe they were just someone yelling very convincingly about dogs. Doesn't matter. You keep moving. Escape plans aren't elegant. They're not clean. They're not cinematic. There's no music swell. There's no rope swing. There's no secret tunnel under the enemy compound lined with patriotic torchlight and emotionally significant flashbacks. There's just mud. And breath. And your body screaming that it's too late. You ignore it. Step 1 is distance. Always distance. Put miles between you and the last place your name existed. So you run. Or limp. Or crawl. Through fields, forests, villages where no one asks questions because no one wants to be the person who asked the wrong question. You take back roads that were already bad before the war made them worse. You follow irrigation ditches, train lines, and whichever direction smells least like gunpowder and betrayal. At some point, you ditch the coat, too noticeable. You bury it under a pile of leaves, say goodbye, and keep going. You keep your ID. Not your real one, your emergency one. The one that says you're a travelling tinsmith named Jean, who's mildly deaf and definitely not important. You're supposed to find a safe house. You don't. Instead you find a barn. The classic. Every resistance manual, every oral tradition, every whispered "you'll be safe if you make it to" ends with a barn. Preferably old, preferably falling apart, preferably so filled with hay and animal stink that no one would bother checking it unless they were specifically hoping to interrogate a goat. This one fits the bill. Slanted, quiet, smells like wet fur and tax evasion. You crawl inside. You don't even try to be quiet. If someone's here, you'll deal with them. If they kill you, at least you don't have to keep walking. The hay is damp. The air is colder than your optimism. You wedge yourself into a corner and breathe through your teeth. Your leg is swelling. You're fairly certain the bullet's still in there, but you're not about to check. You pull off your sock. It squishes. You put it back on. That feels safer somehow. You sleep for 10 minutes. Or maybe 3 hours. Time doesn't matter anymore. Your only real goal is not here. Everything else is optional. Eventually, you hear footsteps. 2 people. Slow. Deliberate. You hold your breath. You grip your knife. You say a quiet goodbye to your spleen, just in case. They leave. You stay. This is the rhythm now. Move, hide, repeat. You become a whisper in your own story. At one point, you barter with a farmer for food. He doesn't ask questions. He gives you bread, cheese, a nod that says, "I know what you are," and a blanket that smells like 20 winters stacked on top of each other. You say thank you. You don't tell him your name. He doesn't ask. You keep heading west. Supposedly, there's a resistance group near the river, or a priest who hides fugitives, or a boat, or just enough quiet to bleed out in peace. Either way, you move. One night, you hide in an attic. The family downstairs has children. One of them giggles. You press yourself flat against the boards and hope no one sees the blood dripping between the floor slats. Another night, you end up in a church. The priest offers no questions, no sermons, just a basin of water and a place to sit. You sit. You fall asleep kneeling. You wake up to the sound of boots outside. The priest tells the soldiers he's alone. He lies better than you do. You consider becoming religious. You don't. Your radio is gone. Your contacts scattered or captured. Your suitcase lost somewhere between the last checkpoint and the moment everything fell apart. You're down to your last set of forged papers, 2 cigarettes, and a heel of bread that could double as a weapon. And still, you keep going, because escape isn't about getting out. It's about surviving just long enough for someone else to get in. You're not the hero. You're the distraction, the expendable piece. The one who pulls attention away just long enough for someone else to do something important. You hate it. You embrace it. Eventually, you find a contact. He doesn't say he's a contact. He just stares at you for a full minute while washing his hands, then mutters, "Weather's turning." You reply, "Could use more rain." He hands you a key, points to a shack down the road. You walk away. Neither of you looks back. Inside the shack, there's food, medical supplies, a map, a note. Wait 2 days, then cross at dusk. You eat, you cry, just a little, quietly, into a tin of sardines that expired in 1938. And then you wait. You're no longer Julian, or Otto, or whoever they trained you to be. You're just motion and instinct, and the low thrum of not dead yet, and for now, that's enough. You hated the radio from the start, not because it's heavy, though it is, not because it's delicate, though it is. You hated it because it talks back. Not in words, not directly, but in clicks, hisses, and the kind of silence that feels like someone holding their breath, just before the door breaks down. They trained you on it, of course, back in England, on rainy days in drafty barns, where the cold made your hands stiff, and your mistakes permanent. You learned how to set up an antenna using a coat hanger and a prayer. You practiced sending Morse code in bursts, short enough not to be triangulated, but long enough not to sound suspicious. But no amount of training prepares you for what it's like in the field. Now you're crouched in the attic of a bakery that hasn't sold real bread since '41. Your knees are aching. Your fingers won't stop twitching. The transmitter hums beside you like it's judging your whole life. And you're listening, just listening, for a voice that might never come. The antenna is strung out the window, disguised as a laundry line. The laundry is real, mostly. A child's sock, a stained undershirt, a pair of bloomers stolen from a market stall to complete the illusion. The old woman downstairs doesn't ask where you got them. She doesn't want to know. You tap out the first message. All safe. Package delivered. Rain expected tomorrow. That means I'm alive. The intel got through. Next drop is Thursday. You wait. You count the seconds in your head. Every second after 10 is dangerous. Every second after 15 is a coffin with your name on it. You hear static. Then, the field is muddy. Harvest soon. It's a response. They got it. You breathe again. This is the job now. Send. Wait. Run. You can never transmit from the same place twice. The Germans have vans. Direction-finding units. They triangulate the signal, then come knocking. Not politely. Not with warrants. Just boot, door, interrogation. One moment you're tapping out coordinates. The next, you're bleeding into your typewriter. You're told 20 minutes is the limit. But that's a fairy tale. Real operators know 6 minutes is suicide. 5 is pushing it. 3 is survivable. If you're fast. If your equipment works. If no one's watching. The equipment almost never works. The batteries are unreliable. The signal crackles. The damn transmitter overheats. One time, the key jammed mid-message and you had to fake a cough for 45 seconds while you shook it back into submission. The neighbours assumed tuberculosis. You let them. You work in the dark. Candles are too risky. Lanterns too obvious. So you tap by memory, by faith, by the sound of your own blood in your ears. You become the rhythm. Dot dot dash. Dot dash dot. Your heartbeat learns to follow. Your nerves don't. You stop sleeping properly. You dream in code. You wake up mid-transmission. One time, you shouted quartz moving east in your sleep, and the girl sleeping next to you rolled off the mattress and reached for a gun that wasn't there. She left the next morning, didn't say goodbye, just looked at the transmitter and said, "You'll die with that thing." You didn't argue, because she's not wrong. Radio operators have the highest mortality rate in the resistance. Not because they're weak, because they're visible, loud, traceable. The moment you touch the key, someone out there knows, so you move constantly. From attic to basement to barn, you pack your gear in a suitcase with false bottoms and broken dreams. You wrap the antenna around your waist. You carry the crystal in your sock. You get good at lying to train guards. I sell sewing machines. I'm looking for my uncle. I'm a travelling notary. No one knows your real job. Even your contacts only know part of it. That's the safety net. You're just the one with the suitcase. Or the man who never sits still. Or the twitchy girl who smells like solder. Sometimes the messages are routine. Straw harvested. Pigeons returned. Sometimes they're code for death. Fence is broken. Field burns. That last one means someone's been captured. You send the emergency protocols. You switch frequencies. You pray. You hear nothing back. You change call signs. Yours was lyric. Now it's echo. Later it'll be thistle or branch. Doesn't matter. They're all just code names for, please let me last one more week. Then one day, your transmitter breaks. Not catastrophically, just a wire, frayed, insignificant. Unless you're 30 miles from help, and there's a drop scheduled in 12 hours. You fix it with chewing gum and rage. The message goes out. Dogs sleep, gate unlocked. It means proceed, but you're not sure it got through. So you wait, then you run. That night, someone leaves a scrap of paper in your shoe. Thistle sings. It means yes. We heard you. Keep going. You don't cry. Not really. But your hands shake for an hour. Because in your world, silence is death. And noise? Noise is a countdown. So you keep tapping. Not because you believe in victory. Because you believe in the message. Because even if your name vanishes, your signal won't. Not yet. It's not your mission. That's what they tell you. The words come down from someone you've never met, scribbled in pencil across a damp slip of paper. Courier delayed. Red must go. That's code. It means someone needs to die. Not captured. Not neutralized. Killed. Gone. Erased. The kind of thing the movies make look sleek. Tight gloves, slick pistol, faint music in the background, a clean shot from across the street. Maybe a quick getaway in a fast car with the Eiffel Tower behind you, glittering dramatically. Yeah. No. You're on a bicycle. In the rain. With a revolver in your pocket wrapped in butcher paper and an unconvincing smile plastered to your face. The tyres are low. The brakes squeal. You're soaked through to the bone, and you've got the beginnings of what's either a head cold or quiet, creeping terror. The target is a collaborator. Maybe. That's what you're told. Confirmed asset. Working with the Gestapo. Names. Maybe he's a monster. Maybe he's just scared. Doesn't matter. You're not the judge. You're not even the jury. You're the trigger. And the trigger doesn't get to ask questions. You rehearse it again. He comes out of the cafe at 5:15, every evening, rain or shine. He carries a folded newspaper. Never speaks to anyone. Walks the same path, past the same bench, through the same alley. That's your window. You park your bike 2 blocks down. You walk, slowly, naturally, not like a person who's trying not to puke in his own mouth. You keep one hand in your pocket, fingers wrapped around the revolver like it's a lifeline. You think about your breathing. You think about your exit. You do not think about what happens after the shot. The moment comes. He exits the cafe, newspaper tucked under his arm, coat buttoned, hat tilted. He looks like every middle-aged man in France. That's the worst part. He doesn't look guilty. He looks ordinary, comfortable. His shoes are polished. Yours are full of mud. He walks past the bench. You cross the street. The alley is 5 meters ahead. 4, 3. You step behind him. No one's watching. You draw. You aim. The revolver is heavier than you remember. You're sweating. It slips a little. You tighten your grip. He turns his head. Maybe he heard you. Maybe he sensed something. You don't know. You fire. The sound is louder than God. Birds scatter. Glass cracks. Time folds. He drops. No scream. Just a grunt. Then silence. You run. No witty one-liner. No second shot. Just your boots slamming the pavement. Your breath burning. And your mind already trying to forget what your eyes won't. You duck into a side street. Cut through a butcher's shop. Out the back. Over a fence. Through someone's garden. Into a canal. You wait in the water for an hour. Shivering. Listening. Eventually, the city moves on. You do too. But something stays behind. The gun is gone. Dismantled. Scattered in pieces across 4 storm drains and a latrine. Your clothes are burned. The hat, the one you wore during the job, tossed into a fire. You watch it curl and blacken. You tell yourself this helps. It doesn't. Back in the safe house, they nod. Well done, they say. Clean job. You want to punch them. Or cry. Or vomit. But you don't. You just nod. They hand you a biscuit. You eat it. Because refusing would be weird. That night, you dream of the man's shoes. Polished. Just like yours used to be. There's no ceremony, no medal, no toast. Just another slip of paper 3 days later. Courier received. Prepare for transit. It means good job. Move along. You move, but not the same way. Something in your gait changes. Slight, permanent. Like you're now carrying something invisible. You tell yourself it was necessary. You tell yourself it was the mission. You don't tell yourself it was right. You don't get to know that. Because this isn't the movies. There's no fade to black. No roll of credits. Just you. And what you did. You've forgotten what it's like to sleep like a human being. Not nap. Not pass out from exhaustion. Real sleep. The kind that starts soft and ends in sunlight, where you stretch, sigh, and feel like a person again. No, that's gone. Now you sleep like a hunted animal. In bursts, in shadows. With your spine crooked and one ear cocked toward every sound the world makes. You don't ease into sleep. You slide into it sideways like a thief. And you never, ever let go of the pistol. It lives under your pillow. Well, sometimes in your hand. Other times tucked into the waistband of your pants. Once you fell asleep with it on your chest and woke up with a bruise shaped like your mortality. But it's always nearby. Not because you're dramatic, because you're still alive. Every safe house has its own lullabies. The creak of floorboards, the whisper of wind through broken windows, the muffled cough of someone else pretending not to exist in the next room. You learn the music of each new place. You memorize every groan the building makes. That way, when something changes, even slightly, you wake up, immediately, with your heart already running. Your body no longer asks for comfort. It asks for warning signs. You sleep fully clothed, always, no matter how hot it gets. Jacket on, boots nearby, knife in the boot, gun in your hand, radio crystals wrapped in a sock and stuffed in your breast pocket. The first time you fell asleep like this, it felt ridiculous. Now, anything less feels suicidal. Blankets are a luxury. Mattresses are a joke. Most nights it's hay, dirt, floorboards, or, once, a pile of rotting newspapers that still smelled faintly of ink and collapse. You curled up on them like a rat. Slept like one too? Twitching, ready to bolt at the sound of your own breath? Dreams? They come. Sometimes. You dream about doors that won't lock. About rooms that fill slowly with water. About your handler's face twisted into someone else's voice. You wake up with a gasp and your gun drawn. Every time. You never fire, but you always think about it. One night, you dream that you forgot your alias. Just blank. Someone asks you your name and you say your real one. You wake up in a cold sweat, whispering it over and over, trying to bury it again. You check your papers 3 times. They're still there. You lie back down. Sleep doesn't come. Eventually, you learn the trick. You tell yourself you're not sleeping. You're resting with a weapon. You're listening with your eyes closed. You're meditating horizontally with murderous intent. It helps. A little. You become a master of the half nap. The blink nod. The 20-second reboot. You learn how to close just one eye at a time. You tell yourself it's a skill. You don't mention it to anyone else. Not because it's weird. Because they're doing it too. You share a room with another courier once. She sleeps with her mouth open and one hand clenched into a fist around nothing. In the middle of the night, she bolts upright and says, "I never said that name." Then lies back down like nothing happened. You don't ask about it. Another time, you share an attic with 2 radio operators. Neither one speaks the entire night. They just lie there, wide-eyed, watching the ceiling. The only movement is the occasional twitch when something heavy passes in the street. The next morning they nod. You nod. No one mentions the smell of fear in the air. Beds become suspicious. Too soft. Too inviting. You sleep better on crates, on steps, on rooftops. Somewhere with wind and edges and reminders that safety is a myth. You once had to hide in a chimney for 8 hours. You dozed off at one point, face in soot, pistol in hand, best rest you've had all year. Sometimes you hear footsteps in your sleep, in dreams, outside the door, on the stairs. You freeze, you count them, you prepare your exit, then silence. No knock, no shout, just the hum of a threat that changed its mind. You lie awake for hours afterward, pistol under your chin, trying to remember if it was real. Eventually, you don't know anymore. It doesn't matter, because you'll do it again the next night, and the one after that, and the one after that, because there's no peace in this war, not even in dreams. The best you can hope for is the kind of sleep where you don't wake up screaming, or worse, forget to wake up at all. So you sleep with one eye open and the other on your pistol, because when the knock finally comes, and it will come, you won't have time to remember where you put it. You'll only have time to pull the trigger. They never train you for what happens when everything goes wrong. Not really. Sure, they teach you how to withstand interrogation, how to resist sleep deprivation, how to hold out under pressure. But that's theory. That's something written down by a man in an office who's never had his teeth kicked in. They don't prepare you for the waiting, the slow, crawling hours where nothing happens, but something is always about to. The hollow moments when you feel your mind cracking just a little, and you can't tell if it's fear or if it's just finally time. Because not breaking isn't about willpower. It's not about defiance. Not some dramatic stare-off with a Nazi across a flickering bulb. No, it's smaller than that. Dirtier. Uglier. It's about staying intact in the quiet. You get picked up during a sweep. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong face, you're clean, no documents, no names, no maps, but you smell like the resistance. And they know it, so you're taken. They don't say what for. They don't say how long. The cell is small, damp, windowless. You sit on concrete, staring at a wall that doesn't care whether you exist. No one speaks to you. The food comes cold. The air smells like bleach and defeat. You wait. First hour. You hold your breath every time you hear boots in the hallway. You're convinced this is it. Now they'll drag you out. Now they'll break you. But they don't. Second hour, you plan your story. Julian Moreau, Chateauroux, son of a lace maker, mild limp. Favourite meal is lentils and boiled chicken. You repeat it over and over until you start believing your own boringness. Third hour, you start talking to the wall. By hour 5, you're singing. Not loud, just under your breath. Old songs, nursery rhymes, anything with rhythm. Rhythm keeps the mind in line. You cling to it like a rope. They finally come. The man is polite, clean uniform, soft voice. Tell us who you are, he says. You do, Julian, Chateauroux. You throw in a cousin with asthma just to spice things up. He nods, smiles, then leaves. You don't sleep that night. You count the bricks in the wall. There are 76. You count again. Still 76, so you feel proud of that. It means your brain is still working. Kind of. The next day they bring in another man. This one doesn't smile. He asks harder questions. Where were you on Tuesday? Who's the butcher in your district? What radio frequency do you use? You say you don't own a radio. that you buy meat at the market, that you were delivering coal to an address you can no longer remember. He slaps you. Not hard. Just enough to say, "I could." You flinch. But you don't talk. Later, they let you sit. You feel grateful for the chair. It's wooden, uncomfortable. You pretend it's a luxury. You thank them. That confuses them. Good, they ask again. You lie again. They keep notes. You try to read their faces. Nothing. One day becomes 2, then 3. You get food once a day, water twice. You ration both, like it's war. Because it is. The cold creeps in. Not just physical, mental, emotional. You stop caring about time, about names. You start forgetting faces. You hum just to hear something alive. The interrogations blur. Sometimes they shout. Sometimes they whisper. Once, they leave you in a room alone with a chair and a rope and a suggestion. You stare at it for an hour. Then you kick it over and sit on the floor. You know what they want. Names, locations, frequencies. But you also know the moment you give them anything, it never stops. 1 word becomes 2. 2 becomes 5. 5 becomes a body count. So you say nothing. Not because you're noble. Because you're afraid of what would happen after you talk. You imagine your contact, shot in the street. The girl who taught you Morse, beaten in front of a wall. The old man with the safe house, dragged away in his slippers. You shut your mouth. Eventually they stop asking questions. That's worse. They leave you alone for hours? Days maybe? No food, no light, just the sounds of other people breaking in other rooms. You hear a scream once. It sounds familiar. Might have been your voice. You talk to the wall again. You give it a name. It doesn't answer. Then without warning they open the door. They hand you your coat, your forged ID, your shoes. They say, "We're letting you go." You don't ask why. You just walk. Out the door. Into the night. Every step feels like a lie. You don't know if it's real, if it's a trap, if they'll shoot you the moment your back turns. But they don't. You make it to a street, then to a bus, then to a contact who stares at you like you're a ghost. "You didn't break?" he asks. You shake your head. He doesn't believe you. You don't blame him. You don't believe it either. But you're out, still intact, mostly. Later, alone, you take off your shirt and count the bruises. You name them. 1 for each question you didn't answer. 1 for every friend still out there. 1 for the part of yourself you buried so deep you might not get it back. That's the art of not breaking. You don't shatter, you splinter. It's a warm day, not hot, just unseasonably pleasant. The kind of day where birds sing like idiots and the sun dares to touch the streets again, like it's finally been invited back to the party. People are outside, windows are open, laundry waves in the wind, and for want, is not code for run. You hear the sound before you see them. A low rumble, not thunder, not boots, not fear. Engines, big ones, the kind that make the ground hum in your teeth. Trucks, jeeps, and something else. Music? No. Horns, honking, random, off-rhythm, joyful honking. You lean out the window, and there they are, Allied forces, American flags on antennas, British ones flapping from rear bumpers, French tricolours hanging from balconies, like someone found them in a drawer and couldn't believe it was time to use them again. Soldiers with cigarettes and grins. Children running beside them, waving. Women crying. Men too stunned to speak. You don't cheer. Not immediately. You just watch. Still, silent. Because part of you doesn't believe it. Another part doesn't remember how. And the tanks roll through town like bored giants. Painted slogans in chalk. From Paris with love to Berlin with regret. Someone hands out chocolate. Someone else hands out hugs. You stay in the doorway, arms crossed, feeling like a ghost at your own funeral. Everyone is celebrating the end. You're still replaying the middle. Your contact, the last one still alive maybe, find you in the afternoon. She's wearing a dress. You've never seen her in anything but wool and fear. She hugs you. You flinch. "It's over," she says, and you nod, even though it's not. You help pull down the German signs. Kommandantur becomes a shattered plank. Verboten gets torn from gates. The word Freiheit appears overnight on every chalkboard, every wall, every scrap of space that once carried silence. Kids stomp on a portrait of Hitler, someone tossed into the street. You watch them like they're playing with fire. People open their homes, wine is shared, food appears. You don't ask from where. The ration books are gone now. The rules are changing faster than you can keep up. Someone lights a radio on the town square. Jazz pours out, real jazz. Brass and swing and joy, too loud to be subtle. Someone dances, then another, then everyone. You still don't. 3 days later, you're interviewed. Not officially. Just a man in a uniform who says he's taking statements for the record. He offers you a cigarette and a seat. You take both. He asks your name. You give your code name. "Your real name," he says. You blink. You hesitate. It's been so long since anyone asked. You say it. He writes it down, and it feels like signing a part of yourself away. He asks what you did, where you were, what you saw. You answer in monotone, like you're reading someone else's file, because it's easier that way. When you finish, he says thank you, and you want to ask, for what? The collaborators get dragged out next, hair shorn, faces smeared with paint, screaming, crying. You see women shoved through the streets, heads shaved by neighbours who looked the other way for 3 years. One man is tied to a pole with a sign. I fed them. I smiled. You know he did worse? Maybe. Or maybe he didn't. You look away. Justice comes fast now. Messy. Personal. Every grudge dressed up as patriotism. You understand it. You don't join in. You've seen what vengeance looks like up close. It doesn't always wear the right uniform. You visit the safe house you once used, the one with the priest. He's gone. The church is boarded. Rumour says he was taken just before the Allies arrived. No one knows where. Or they do, and won't say. You light a candle anyway. Whisper thank you to the dark. Outside a boy hands you a flower. You take it. You don't smile. At night, you write your report. It's not required. No one asked. But you do it anyway. On thin paper, in tight script. You list every name, every mission, every loss. You leave out the part where you screamed, the part where you broke, the part where you nearly shot a man because he knocked twice instead of 3 times. You burn the last page, not out of fear, out of mercy. Liberation isn't clean. It doesn't come with closure. It comes with silence and mess, and the overwhelming realization that you survived something that never really ended. Yes, the uniforms are different now. The flags too. But the shadows haven't moved. Not really. You still sleep lightly. Still check the windows. Still pause at the sound of boots. But you're free. Technically. That's what they call it. Freedom. So you get dressed. You join the crowd. You drink wine you didn't ask for. You toast with people who didn't fight but claim they did. You listen to speeches that make everything sound noble. And when someone asks, were you in the resistance? You shrug, because there's no right answer. only memory, and the long road out. You walk outside, not back into the war, not anymore, but not really into peace either. It's something in between, like an intermission no one claps for. The streets are quieter now, almost dazed. Some shops are open, others boarded. You hear someone laugh. You don't trust it. The paper in your pocket says you're done. You're cleared. You're processed. You're honourably discharged from classified service, whatever that means. It also says not to discuss your work for reasons of national security, as if you wanted to, as if you even could. Because when someone asks, "What did you do during the war?" you can't just say, "I let a dying man whisper his last password into my sleeve." Or, "I saw a boy hand over a suitcase that blew up a cafe." Or, "I killed a man whose name I never learned." No, you say, "Communications?" Or, "Transport logistics." Then you excuse yourself to go breathe into your hand somewhere quiet. You try to go home. It's weird. The walls are too clean. The food has flavour again. The bed is soft and somehow wrong. You flinch at the slam of a cupboard. You jump when a car backfires. You lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember if you locked the door, even though you now live 3 floors up and there's no one hunting you. You forget your alias at the market and accidentally give it instead of your real name. You laugh. The grocer does not. Your family treats you like glass. They say things like, "You were so brave," and "We're so proud," and "You must be glad it's over." And you smile. You nod. You do not say, "I can't sleep unless I'm holding a weapon." You get a job. Filing mostly. Or maybe translation. Whatever fits into a schedule that doesn't leave time to think. You drink too much coffee. You sit by the window. You don't talk to anyone unless they ask first. You tried dating once. It doesn't go well. You told him you were a courier. He asked if that meant bicycles. You smiled and said yes. Months pass. You get a letter. From someone who served with you. It's vague, short. Just a few lines about "hope you're well," and "can you believe they made a movie?" and "do you ever dream about the safe house near Lyon?" You do. You write back. Then burn the letter. Not out of fear, out of instinct. One day, someone from the agency visits. Different suit. Same badge. Same 2 clean shoes. He thanks you again for your service. Says your file's been reviewed for commendation. Says you'll get something in the mail. A certificate, maybe. Or a medal you can't wear in public. He asks if you want to be reactivated. You laugh in his face. He doesn't take offence. He just says, "You were good at it." You say, "I was lucky." He doesn't argue. Just hands you a card. Just in case. You put it in a drawer and forget about it, mostly. Years pass. Someone writes a book. Not about you, not exactly, but close enough. A composite character. A woman with red hair and nerves of steel who single-handedly saved a train full of Allied spies while playing the violin and breaking German codes in her sleep. Everyone says, "That must have been what it was like for you." You nod. You don't tell them the truth, that most days were mud, mouldy bread, and the gnawing fear that your contact was 5 minutes late because he was already dead. You sign a copy of the book for your niece. You write, "Be brave, but not this way." One winter, you meet another former agent by accident, in a bakery. You recognise each other instantly. It's in the eyes. You sit down. You don't speak for 10 minutes. Then he says, "Still dream about that cow?" You both laugh so hard, people stare. It's the best day you've had in years. Eventually, they declassify parts of the war. There's a museum exhibit. You go. You find your old radio. The actual one. You know it's yours because there's a dent on the corner from when you threw it during a power surge in a pigsty. It sits behind glass. Quiet, safe. The label says, used by resistance agents during Operation X. You stare at it for 20 minutes. Someone asks if you were involved. You say, I just like old radios. Then you walk away. So what did you actually accomplish? That question never goes away. Not even decades later, when they pin a medal on your chest and call you a hero in a ceremony with bad champagne and worse speeches. They say words like sacrifice and honour and courage. But not once do they say lonely, messy, or terrified. Not once do they mention the people who didn't make it. You keep a list in your head. You whisper their names at night, sometimes, just to make sure they don't vanish completely. You didn't save the world. You didn't win the war by yourself. You carried messages. You passed codes. You helped strangers who never knew your name. You survived. That was the job. And you did it. A government office sends you a form. Something about veterans' benefits. You're not sure if it applies to people who weren't technically there. The form has a box labelled, "What was your role?" You stare at it for a full 5 minutes. You write, "Observer." Then cross it out. You put nothing. You send it back anyway. They never reply. You see war movies now and then. They all look wrong. The uniforms are too clean. The actors too brave. The fear too choreographed. They shout clever things before shooting, then light cigarettes like it means something. You leave halfway through. At the door someone says, "Real heroes like you must love this stuff." You don't answer, because you don't know what a hero is. Only what it isn't. One night, you wake up convinced you heard Morse code in the walls. You press your ear to the plaster. You know it's absurd, but you still listen, just in case. A neighbour asks you to babysit. It's innocent. Normal. You agree, because you need to prove to yourself that you're capable of something. The kid asks if you've ever killed anyone. You blink. You say no. He shrugs and asks for more juice. You spend the next hour staring at the fridge, thinking about what truth means when it's edited for bedtime. Your parents frame your certificate, the one the government sent, official, sealed, signed by someone who's never met you. They hang it in the hallway near your old school photos. You avoid that wall, not because it reminds you of the war, because it doesn't. Eventually you visit a memorial. It's quiet, clean, rows of names you don't recognise, and some you do. One in particular makes your knees go soft. You leave a stone. That's the tradition, right? Leave something behind. You sit there for hours. Say nothing. Not even goodbye. A friend sends you a letter. She's in America now. Married. Kids. She says, "We're normal now." It's weird. You write back, "I'm trying." You don't send it. You start seeing a doctor. A quiet one. Doesn't ask stupid questions. Just lets you talk. Eventually. You tell her about the barn, about the transmitter, about the alley. She doesn't flinch. You cry once. Mid-sentence. She hands you a tissue like it's the most normal thing in the world. You think maybe it is. You begin to dream again. Not about running. Not about dying. Just about faces. Ones you loved. Ones you lost. You wake up with your hand over your heart. Not in pain. Just remembering. Sometimes people thank you. Old men in parades. Young students who found your name in a book. You smile. You say thank you. Then you go home and stare at the wall for an hour. wondering if memory is a curse or a kindness. You get a dog, a mutt, loud, needy, wonderful. He barks at shadows and sleeps at your feet. You name him Echo. It feels right. One summer evening you sit on the porch. The air smells like honeysuckle and something close to peace. You hear kids playing in the street. Someone's radio drifts in and out from a window. No code, just music. Real, honest music. You think, this is what we fought for. Not medals, not parades. Moments like this. And even if you still wake up sweating sometimes, even if you still keep a knife in the drawer, even if you never tell the full story to anyone, you're here, you're alive. And for now, that's enough. You take a copy of the report summary. The man who handed you the folders says it's yours to keep. You fold it and put it in your coat pocket. You don't know why. You're not going to frame it. On the way out, you ask if there's any record of the people you worked with. He looks up something on a screen. He says most of those files were lost. A few names are still classified. One of them is your handler. You ask if you can leave a message, just in case. He says no. You don't argue. You thank him and leave. You walk 2 blocks before throwing the report in a trash can. It wasn't worth the train ride. Years go by. You read more names in newspapers, obituaries, recognisable ones. Politicians, journalists, former military officers. Some were part of it, some weren't. Some claim they were after the fact. You stay quiet. At one point, someone writes a memoir about the resistance. It becomes popular. Bookstores keep it on display near the front. You buy a copy. The author's name rings a bell. Inside, there are stories. Some true, some exaggerated. One sounds almost exactly like an operation you led. Except in the book, someone else does it. A man. He gets the credit. He even gets the girl. You finish reading it in one sitting. You don't tell anyone what's wrong with it. Later, a university professor contacts you. He's working on a project, archiving personal stories of the war. He wants to record yours. He says it could help others understand what that period was like. You ask what will happen to the recordings. He says they'll be stored in a digital archive. Public access. You say no. He sounds disappointed, maybe confused. But you're not going to summarise 3 years of fear and compromise in a tidy audio clip for people who will listen to half of it while doing laundry. You don't owe anyone that. One day someone you trained gets an award. You don't know them well. You work together on 2 missions, but their face is on television. The announcer reads a citation. Courage under fire. Unshakable under pressure. Instrumental in Allied success. You don't feel bitter. Just tired. Afterward, she sends you a postcard. It says, I learned it from you. You put it in a drawer with the others, the ones from people who made it, who built lives, who remember. That's your legacy. Not monuments, not medals. People. There are things you never told anyone. Not because they were secrets, just because they wouldn't make sense to someone who wasn't there. The man who coughed in Morse code. The priest who hid messages in the hymn sheets. The girl who recited coordinates like poetry when she was drunk. The boy who whistled the same 3 notes before every mission, like a superstition. The first time you killed someone. The second time when it felt easier. The time you almost died and weren't sure if that would have been better. These things don't fit in official files, but they happened. You remember them. That's the only place they live now. You have a will, standard, clean, but one line is unusual. You ask to be buried with your last forged ID. No explanation, just the paper, folded, faded. You've kept it all these years in a tin box under your sink. Every time you moved, You checked to make sure it was still there. No one else ever saw it. It was never used. It was your escape plan, the one that never got activated. A name you never needed, but always kept. It meant you had a way out. You never used it, but you still want it with you when you go. Your legacy won't be in textbooks. Your photo isn't in museums. The official records say your contribution was moderate. That's fine. You know what you did. So do a few others. That's enough. You avoid crowded places, not because you're afraid of people, but because your instinct is to scan every face. It's exhausting. You walk into a room and automatically locate exits, windows, anything that could be used as cover. It happens without thinking. You can't stop it. Friends call it paranoia. You call it training. You used to know everyone's shoes. It was easier to identify people that way when you couldn't look directly. That habit stayed. You still remember who wears what. You avoid surprises, loud noises, sudden changes. You don't like birthdays. You don't like firecrackers. You don't like unfamiliar keys in familiar locks. Even now, decades later, a knock at the wrong time of day makes you freeze. You've seen therapists, some good, some not. The good ones don't ask you to share everything. They understand you can't. The bad ones ask about your childhood when you came to talk about waking up in the middle of the night, gripping your bedsheets like a weapon. You don't hate people, but you don't trust easily. You don't believe in easy friendships. You test people. Not on purpose. You just can't help it. You watch how they talk to strangers. You watch how they react to silence. You wait to see if they ever mention you by name when you're not in the room. Most of them fail. Not because they're bad people. Because your standard for safe is different. You expect betrayal. Not dramatically, just eventually. You keep a bag packed, always, a small one, not like before. Just clothes, ID, some money. You tell yourself it's for emergencies. But you've never defined what an emergency is. Your faith in institutions is minimal. You don't think governments are evil. You just think they're careless. You think they forget people. You think they create problems and then delegate the consequences. You did things under orders. Some were fine, some were necessary. A few still wake you up at night. You believed in the mission. You don't anymore. You believe in actions. In individuals. In split-second decisions that either save lives or ruin them. You've seen people do good things for bad reasons and bad things for good ones. You don't call yourself a hero. You don't think anyone who actually did the work does. You worked with people who sacrificed everything. Some for country, some for the person next to them, some because they couldn't think of anything else to do. You respect all of them. You don't talk about any of them. There are names you'll never say again. Some because they're dead. Some because saying them out loud might still get someone hurt. You don't keep photos on the walls. You don't keep records. You don't write memoirs. Your life is full of blank spots on purpose. Once, someone asked why you never carried a camera during the war. You said, "Some things aren't meant to be remembered that way." Or they laughed. You didn't. You don't like small talk. It feels dishonest. You'd rather talk about something that matters or say nothing at all. When someone complains about traffic or bad service at a restaurant, you nod. You don't remind them that you once starved for 2 days waiting for a coded radio signal that never came. You keep those thoughts to yourself. You know they wouldn't understand. You're glad they wouldn't understand. It means they never had to. You're cautious about optimism. You don't expect things to get better automatically. You know better. But you keep moving forward. You do what's in front of you. Not because it's part of some larger plan, just because it needs doing. You trust routines, they're stable. You make your bed. You wash your dishes. You check your locks. You still carry a pocket knife. Not because you need it, just because you feel wrong without it. You've learned not to expect gratitude. Most people don't know what others gave up to make peace possible. You don't expect thanks. You just hope they don't waste it. You watch news reports now with a kind of dull detachment. Same mistakes, same speeches, different faces. You wonder sometimes if anyone read the reports you filed. You wonder if the names you saved ever made it past the paperwork. You wonder what the point was. Then someone visits, brings their child, tells you that they're here because of something you did. They don't know the details. They just know enough to say it mattered. You nod. You don't cry. You feel it though. In your throat. In your chest. It's not pride, it's relief. Your body isn't what it was. The cold gets into your bones faster now. Your joints ache. Your hearing is worse. Your eyes too. Sometimes you forget words. Simple ones. You hate that more than anything. You were once fluent in 3 languages, could break a cipher in under 30 seconds, could identify German equipment by silhouette. Now you misplace your keys twice a week, but you're still sharp. Mostly. You still notice things. You still remember the important stuff. Even if you don't say it out loud. You attend funerals. More each year. Some for people you knew. Some for people you barely knew, but felt obligated to show up for. You stand in the back. Hands folded. Eyes dry. You say the right things. Then you go home and sit in silence for a while. You're not angry at the world. You're not bitter. You're just careful. You've seen too much to take anything at face value. You've heard too many promises that didn't hold up. But you still get up every day. You still do what needs to be done. You still treat people decently. Because if you stop doing that, then what was the point of surviving it all? You have habits that no one understands. You double-check locks. You memorize license plates. You never sit with your back to a door. You never write anything down that matters. You keep your phone away from windows. You sleep with a flashlight nearby. You listen more than you talk. None of these things are strange to you. They're how you made it. They're how you still do. This isn't a sad life. It's just a different one. You learned lessons you didn't ask for, in places you didn't choose, under conditions that most people never imagine. You adapted. You endured. You got out. And you built something after. You keep a small box in the closet. It's old, made of wood, held together with a strip of black tape and one brass hinge that sticks. Inside, a forged passport, 2 ration books, a key with no door, and a faded map with 3 locations circled in pencil. You haven't opened the box in years, but you know exactly what's inside. You don't look at it for sentiment. You look at it the way you'd look at a manual for a machine you no longer use. Familiar. Obsolete. Still important. Every few years, someone contacts you. A researcher, a journalist, a historian. They ask if you'd be willing to talk about the war. You say no. Not because you don't remember, because you remember exactly, and that's not something you're interested in repeating. You spend your mornings in silence. You drink your coffee slowly. You go for walks. You water the same 3 plants. You sit in the same chair. You watch the sun move across the room, like it always does. There are photos in a drawer, faces you haven't seen in decades. Some names are gone. Others still come back at night, uninvited. You don't organise the drawer. You leave it the way it is. It's not meant to be displayed. You write no memoirs. You give no speeches. You don't leave behind volumes of declassified drama, but you leave something. A name on one report, buried in a file that maybe someone will read. A message someone received at the right time. A person still alive, because you handed them the right paper, in the right cafe, with the right lie. You did the job. Then you came home. And that's where you stayed. Not as a hero, not as a ghost, just as someone who did what was needed, and then lived quietly when no one needed anything anymore.